Okay, guys, welcome back to the podcast, Season 2, Episode 8. My name is Ian Fraser.
I'm Mike Martisevich.
Guys, we have a real treat today. This is one for the equipment junkies out there. We have Kim Braley of KBS Shafts. Kim is someone just steeped in the history of this game, someone that has been in the industry for probably most of his life, ever since his father was and Kim were working the PGA Tour. We want to get into a bit of that. I mean, it's a pretty unique story, Mike.
Yeah, it's like the family that pioneered the golf industry. This is his backstory is cool, but for everyone who follows us and sends us club building questions, this is an episode you definitely don't want to miss.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that people will have maybe always had questions about. There'll be some answers in here. I want to get into some questions on Kim has stepped shafts, he has stepless shafts. They basically invented frequency matching. They brought that system to the industry. I want to hear how that originated. TK, who's on with us also today. I mean, TK is a really unique figure. TK is, I believe, a +7 or +8 handicap around Whisper Rock. He's a unique figure, and everywhere I go around North America, people know of TK and his credibility. So we'll dive into that. Okay, let's get the guys in and let's get chatting. Gents, how are we?
Well, I think all things considered, we're doing pretty well.
Good to hear you're doing well, and we're all struggling through this little phase here. Not how we expected to start the golf season, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. It's like you had mentioned earlier when we were speaking. It started out so great, and it was, for us, it was record breaking, like I told you, and for this to happen is, it's just something that we have to deal with, and it's all we can do.
That's all we can do. And TK, I know the restrictions are a little bit less in Arizona. Are you still getting to play a little bit?
It's interesting. I'm actually playing quite a bit every afternoon. I go into Kim and I have an office at Cool Club, so we're able to do a lot of testing and research out of there.
Oh, good.
And that's actually where I'm at now. And then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll head up to Whisper Rock and play some golf.
That's not a bad gig.
He's played golf every day. He's played golf every single day. 7 days a week.
1982, probably.
Yeah, just about.
More than I'm accustomed to at this time. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's good. No, I'm delighted to hear that. Well, guys, we really appreciate you joining us. I mean, if there's one thing that's came out of this awful situation, it might be that we're all afforded a little bit more time, and maybe we can connect and do things like this. So we're really thankful that you guys were able to come on and do this with us. And there's going to be lots of questions today that hopefully our viewers and listeners, whether they're watching on the YouTube channel or listening on the podcast, there's going to be some great info for them. So I'm excited for what we uncover today. So Kim, take us back to, where did the journey start for KBS and even prior to that for you guys?
Well, as you know, I worked at some other golf shaft companies prior to KBS. Eventually our company was acquired by True Temper, and this was 14 years ago. Or 13 to 14 years ago, and I was out of work for about 6 or 8 months, and just played golf every day. It was great, and but I had an opportunity to go to work for FST to create a brand, and that's what we've done. And in a little more than 10 years, this brand has become the second largest steel golf shaft company in the world.
Quite remarkable when you think of the landscape of steel shafts and how long the competitors that you have been in the marketplace doing what they're doing. And, for you to come in there and take that number 2 spot in that timeline is really remarkable. So kudos to you guys for that. So tell us a little bit about your background in steel shafts. I'd love to hear a little bit about, your father and yourself and the story and the origin.
Well, it's a long story. I'm gonna
shortcut it for us.
Just hit some points here. My father had been involved in the golf business prior to doing golf shafts. He had developed a golf club that was made out of 100% titanium with tungsten weights back in the 70s. And it was a very, very, very expensive club. And 80% of our sales were actually in Japan. But anyway, we went to, I'm going to tell you how the frequency matching thing started.
Please.
We went down
We
went down to Palm Beach, which is where Wilson had an Iron Byron, and that was really the only one at our disposal.
What timeline are we thinking here? Roughly around when?
This would be in the late 70s.
Wow. Okay, so Wilson was still a huge powerhouse at that point in the golf industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we did was, we were trying to do some research on the clubs and where the weight and CG should be. So we had a couple clubs that we wanted to use as a master so that we could get this test started. And we checked the CGs on the horizontal and vertical axis and the moment and what have you. So we knew these golf clubs were absolutely identical. Put the exact same shaft in it, put it on a deflection board. If you remember the deflection board. Did everything that I could possibly do to try to make it exactly the same. But in testing it, when we got down there, the guy had to fiddle with the machine a little bit in order to get the first one going straight. And then we put the second one in the exact same orientation and had entirely different results. So my dad and I are like looking at each other thinking, this is a huge waste of time. We don't have, how can we do a test if we don't have a master?
Right.
So we did as best we could with what we had because we were there.
Right.
But on the way home, we were driving and all of a sudden he just came up with, it was the shafts. And that's really that's what started me into designing golf shafts.
And at that point, sort of measuring these things dynamically was probably fairly rare. Measuring, components in motion.
Rare. When I first started trying to understand this stuff, I went to the library at the University of Pennsylvania. That's how we used to have to do research, guys. It was, you went to a friggin' library and you read friggin' books, and it was very time consuming, and you wanted to have to learn, But anyway, there was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there. There was quite a bit on hickory. There was not a single thing on steel golf shafts, and other than just the origin. So I ended up studying ship masts and flagpoles and other tubular structures, and really just started out with a clean plate. I didn't have any kind of a base to really work from because there wasn't a base. So it was just trial and error and testing and trial and error and testing and trial and error and testing.
That's crazy. So Kim, when you and your dad came up with frequency matching, do you think today taper needs to be frequency match as much as what parallel would be? Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why you would not. The really nice thing about parallel is the ability to be able to manipulate that a little bit, more so than a taper. But I think parallel or tapered, I think. Is frequency the end all? No, it's not the end all, but it is certainly a very good measurement in terms of being able to determine if one shaft is stiffer than the other and those type of things, as long as they're a like structure. But we get quite a lot of questions going, why frequency, and you explain it to people going, it keeps everything consistent. It helps us, find any outliers if we do have one. So that's it's why I asked. I get it asked all the time about frequency. So to have the inventor, answer that for us is going to help.
Hey, you know what? I think it might be beneficial if we talk a little bit about how we do it.
Yeah, sure. Please.
And TK does a lot more building than I do. So why don't you take it over here, TK, and just talk about what our process is from wedge to driver.
I'll start with irons because that's where our bread and butter were in steel. And Kim when he first designed the shaft for a KBS product, it was our Tour 130. It was basically a shaft that we needed to have something in the industry that was going to be able to fit a lot of people, and at the time create feel and desired optimal launch and spin rates. And the 130, when he designed that, to be honest, the only shaft really the tour guys were playing was basically an X100.
Yeah.
And we were looking for a frequency as far as that would create a tighter dispersion with a softer feel. That's what was the goal. And that's a really hard goal to achieve. And when Kim created the first shaft, what he did was so ingenious to this product was that the shaft reduction from one step to the next reduced incrementally to create the most amount of efficiency in how the shaft unloaded. And in doing that, he created a product that not only had a great feel, but actually frequencied a half a flex to a flex stiffer if you looked at frequency numbers, but actually felt softer, which is really, really hard to do in what we were trying to do.
Very hard to do, and as a fitter, something that's very desirable. Giving someone the feel and that sort of feedback from the shaft that it feels like it's loading, you feel like you're creating energy, but as a fitter, we're giving them stability and less deflection, whether it be in either axis. I love to hear that as the concept. That's amazing.
So what we did after we created the shaft, after Kim created the shaft, and I can say we, after Kim created the shaft, we needed to catch the outliers on both sides, people that needed a higher launch or lower launch, and C-taper was born, and some different shafts. So we weren't, because not everybody goes into one shaft, obviously depending on how they unload the shaft or tempos. There's so many varieties into fitting. And that's where it's so integral into trying to, make sure we have a shaft that fits everybody.
Yeah.
But I'll lead into, once we did the steel, we're trying to get to the aftermarket. We're trying to make sure that all the fitters have a way to make their players better. And that's how we, integrated into graphite shafts, because, really graphite started for us when, as things evolved in the golf manufacturing companies, loft started to get stronger, and we started to lose 3 and 4 irons in the bag. They started to go to graphite, and we wanted to bridge the gap between steel and fairway woods. And Kim used the same EI curve numbers as our tour into a graphite, and I don't know if it was luck or I can't say it's luck, because whatever he designs usually ends up working tremendously, but the results we had with that first graphite really set us in motion to create the TGI product, the Max product, and our TD shaft in our driver. Yeah.
And I definitely want to go into graphite in a little bit, but just before we get there, I would love to touch on, guys, I'd love to touch on your relationship and how well that has worked, obviously, over the years, because you guys have a really unique relationship. TK, as your pedigree as a player is, so high, and you're very unique in that you can perform at high level at various speeds. And I've seen you guys do it in person at cool clubs. And Kim, you'll ask for a specific swing speed or hit this shot. I want to see how the shaft moves. Talk to me about how that relationship is unique.
Who would you like to answer that? You want Tom?
Yeah, you start maybe, Kim, and give us your thoughts. I'd love to hear TK's as well.
Honestly, Tom is a very curious person when it comes to golf, and for probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years before he was hired, he was doing the majority of my testing just because he wanted to be on the cutting edge. Right. TK has won tournaments with every single shaft I've designed. He won it with the Tour. He won it with the C-taper. He won it with the S-taper. He won it with all my steel shafts. He's won a tournament with. Yeah. And you've experienced it, so you know what he is able to do, and how it makes my job so much easier, in that I have a person that can swing a 6-iron at 65 miles an hour and have every number across the board on the launch monitor be perfect. The angle, it just be perfect. And so anyway, it's just been, it's cut the development time down tenfold. I don't have to go out and get a whole bunch of amateurs and then start figuring out which ones make sense and which ones don't. And you know, in order to design shafts for people that are average players, generally you have to really get a lot of data.
Right.
And
obviously, normally the process is going to be to go and do that with an iron bar, isn't it? You're going to go to a robot, program the robot to certain speeds and delivery characteristics, but you don't get the feedback from that. You can turn to TK and go, what did that feel like?
Exactly. And that's, you know, that's the feel to me is just so important. Not everybody loves the way our shafts feel. I mean, I've been fighting, you know, when I was a kid, I had two options. I could either play a dynamic or I could play an apex, and that was it. And then Union Tubular had a shaft called a Propel, which was also a dynamic. So, I mean, that's all we had to choose from. One of the things that we're most proud of is a lot of the players today, and almost all the kids in college, at least they all had a chance to have the majority of these guys have actually probably been fit, I believe. Yeah. I think the majority of the golfers that are at the top of the pyramid, with the exception of some tour players because they're just so hard-headed, have, you know, the people coming up anyway. Yeah, I think the majority of them have been fit. I really do. Those that are the serious golfers.
I completely agree with that. And TK, tell us your sort of you know, experience with this process.
For me, the endeavor kind of came with Kim came to me and did some testing and did some prototyping. I've always just wanted to get the most out of what I could in my game. Like, you know, to me, there's four facets of golf. One's your body, one's your technique, one's the equipment you're playing, and one's your mental process. Yeah. The equipment is such a massive part to allow the others to happen. Without the equipment being right, you're basically at a roadblock from the very beginning. And I've always been, you know, people would say you're kind of a club junkie, and I said no. I'm looking for what is the best in the world, and you know, I felt like when Kim was onto what he was doing, he was literally creating it at the moment that I was still looking for it. Right. And so, what better situation than to be able to have the guy that makes these shafts invented for frequency matching? I've learned more about golf and shafts in the last 10 years than I would never dreamed of, you know, and I'm still learning stuff daily from him, you know, because he'll forget he'll forget more than I'll ever learn in terms of golf shafts. Yeah. So I've been fortunate in the golf swing portion that I've been around some really good people. My life changed in terms of golf swing in 2000 when I had an injury, and I was lucky enough to go see Butch Harmon and start a road of how I would learn to swing. So I was fortunate in those two aspects.
And in this time, you were talking about this time period. I remember the first KBS Tour product I had in my hands. We were able to put it in TaylorMade Burner 09 irons. Was the first time that we really saw, you know, this iron, how good it was, and then obviously having Tour 90 and the ability to maybe use something that's a bit more stable but lightweight compared to what else was in the marketplace. And that was a game changer for us. You know, I was at TaylorMade at the time, and that was such a unique combination, those two. Maybe talk to us through this time period of, you know, 10, 11 years or so. How has the game changed? The ball has changed. We have launch monitors now. We have more knowledge than ever now. Maybe, Kim, if you can, just tell us a little bit about the evolution in this time space.
Well, you know, obviously the ball continues to evolve. Yeah. And which was the biggest incremental change, I believe. I believe so. But, you know, in the last 10 years, golf clubs have gotten so strong. You know, it's a distance battle. The OEMs want the golf clubs to go longer. They want their 8-iron to go longer than the other guys. And, you know, they've learned a lot about how to manage CGs. Yeah. And so they've learned how to put a much stronger loft on the golf club with a much lower CG to be able to obtain the same type of ball flight at a much lower loft, which equals more distance. And so, Tom, chime in. I would say other than the ball, and of course, golf clubs get a little bit longer as time goes on.
Yeah.
So it's just so unfortunate that we have no standards in our industry. It's unfortunate that you and I can't have a conversation and be talking about the exact same thing because, you have a pedigree from TaylorMade. So you may measure things a certain way. I may measure things from a totally another. Now, a couple of years ago, we went around to all the tour vans. We were at an event, and I don't know where it was, but somewhere. And we went around to each of the tour vans, and we measured a 45-inch golf club at each one of them, and not two of them were the same. And I'm talking about...
Our biggest problem, Kim, was at TaylorMade, we couldn't even measure it the same. We had a tour ruler and a production ruler.
Yeah.
So that's the same company. So I hear exactly what you're saying.
But anyway, I don't know how I got on that, but I knew about. Wade told me about your tour ruler and I knew about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know how I got stuck on that, but that's just one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is consistency and continuity, and you and I having a conversation about the same thing, and the specs of golf clubs being the same, and how that has evolved, and it really has evolved. TK, what have you seen in that time period?
To add on a little bit to what you guys are saying, we like to try to be consistent in the verbiage that we're using. And for instance, it's so important, like when you're doing something and you're trying to get a person come in and they're saying, yeah, I need an extra stiff shaft. And they're convinced they need an extra stiff shaft. Well, to me, whether it says stiff, extra stiff, that's out the door now. We don't, But and then the other thing that can be out the door is even the verbiage of frequency can be out the door, simply because if it's not measured the same way, some guy comes in and says, hey, the frequency on my shafts are 7.5 and they're really 6.0. Well, then, so like you're saying, the hardest part is really finding the consistency of knowing what the verbiage is and having everybody get on the same page. Yeah. As far as golf equipment goes, we got to a point to where we were everybody needed less spin. And we created products to have less spin. The problem is then as the heads got stronger and the heads create less spin as well, now we have to go back to shafts that complement the head. So we have to adapt to whatever the OEMs and the fitters are doing. So we're trying to give everybody options in both regards.
Yeah. I think as a club builder, the standards in the industry don't exist really either, other than, we mix epoxy the same, we have the same ferrules sometimes, but, I've chatted to multiple club builders, whether it's tour or, custom facilities like us. And, I'll ask them, what's your 7-iron frequency out at? And they'll tell me a number that, are they far off? Am I far off? So there's so many little inconsistencies that I wish there was a standard. Does that mean maybe it's our turn to set, standards for club building and club fitting? Maybe, but I agree with you. I could have a conversation with 5 club builders and it would be like a swarm of bees. It's just so much information and some of it doesn't even add up.
So that's where with KBS, we do everything. So our verbiage within our lines, they're very, very consistent in what we're saying. So for instance, if a girl comes in, I've handled the LPGA the last couple of years, kind of by fluke, because we designed the graphite shaft that really came out and it's exceeded every expectation we would have ever dreamed of in terms of us getting into graphite. And that has to do with Kim creating the EI curve around our tour. And we've had a lot of wins already. LPGA, Lydia Ko had a great year the first time she came out with it. But if a girl comes in and she's swinging at 80 miles an hour, we designed a shaft that's 80 grams to freak out at 4.0. And I can make that frequency go to 3.7 or 4.3, depending on what her needs are and how she's looking for ball flights and stuff. So when we create frequencies around feel and weight, it's very easy for us to get to almost anybody. I mean, really anybody that's looking to fit a shaft.
Yeah. And that's cool to hear you talk about the LPGA Tour there, TK, because I think one thing when people look at, some of the stats and speeds that are, the players are having on the LPGA Tour, it represents the average golfer, doesn't it? That's the club golfer's speeds. So it really matches in well.
Yeah. in Japan, believe it or not, they look towards the LPGA Tour in making a lot of their buying, in buying their equipment, which is brilliant. Why should we be looking at Tiger Woods or anybody? I mean, why should we be looking towards people that swing that, so much faster than us, have so much more ability, yada, yada, yada. But in Japan, the LPGA Tour is very, very influential as far as what you were talking about, and rightly so.
Yeah, I've got an uncle who's a good senior player, and he asked me, he got a simulator, and he's like, what do these numbers mean? And I sent him, some of the LPGA averages, and he's like, why'd you send me the LPGA? I was like, just swing and see what the numbers were. And sure enough, a couple days later, he was like, oh, my numbers are so similar. It makes so much more sense to relate myself to those numbers. I'm like, yeah, other than if they had some senior tour numbers up there, that would be perfect. But, he can relate so much easier.
Kim,
hey, I'll tell you, a quick little deal here, and this is off of something like what TK was saying earlier about stiffness. You have guys that are just stuck on a stiff, and if you fit them and you fit them into a regular, the next thing you know, they're having a conniption. So what we do in some cases is we'll drop down and wait. Give them an extra stiff shaft at that weight, dropping down, which is actually weaker than the R-Flex that they were fit into. And now all of a sudden they're happy because they're not swinging stiff anymore. They're swinging an extra stiff shaft, but they don't realize it's actually weaker than a regular.
Yeah.
Because of the weight, the way we do the tour, we go from 135 actually, which we don't sell. We just use that for a few tour players, all the way down to 90 grams at 5 gram increments. So somewhere within that range, you should be able to fit, a high percentage of the people that walk through the doors. Sure. And that's what we've done with all of our products. I like to bracket things. I'm all about fitting, guys. I mean, there's nobody that's more about fitting. I'm all about fitting. I mean, the first golf shafts I ever designed were designed for frequency. I've never designed a golf shaft that wasn't meant for a particular segment of the industry, or not the industry, but of the golfers, of the golfing public. And anyway, so if you, I just don't. I am one that believes that if you don't get fit, you're just doing yourself such an inservice that I talk about it every single time I get a chance.
And one of the things that Mike and I have been working on, Kim, during this kind of off period is we do a lot of talking about club fitting, obviously on the channel and our different outlets. But one thing I don't think that complements that is nearly enough chat about how the build process complements the fit. And one is only as good as the other, because I think there's a lot of adoption for fitting now, but I still don't think people are going, okay, I need that club to be built correctly so that the fit is a valid fit, and simple things like someone orders a driver, they got a demo, they go to the pro and the pro puts a mid-size grip on it, goes to 67 grams, and all of a sudden they don't feel the head as much. And, they go, well, that was a bad fit. Well, it wasn't a bad fit. You just changed the characteristics of that fitted club. So we're really passionate about talking about the build as well as the fit.
Yeah, whenever people ask me about fitting, I encourage them to go to an established operation, somewhere where fitting is what they do. I'm not going to say that any kind of fitting is better than nothing at all. I would imagine, but there's certainly some that do it much better than others, and those that do it for a living are the ones that I always steer people towards.
Ian, you made a great point right there, though. A lot of guys that go to demo day and, they hit that driver on the range, and that's why, you say, do not, you need to leave with that driver, have them order another one. Because first off, we don't know, we're lucky enough to have, our shafts, for aftermarket, they meet a very, our tolerances are very well, so you're going to get close, very, very close to what you're getting. But a lot of times tolerances fall out of, and then your frequency could be not only way off, but you made a good point about, a guy that demo driver has a 48 gram grip on it, and he's normally playing a 62 gram grip. that totally changed the dynamics of the clubs as soon as he takes the grip off.
That's right.
So,
yeah. That's it. And I think the more education people get about the simple thing, and those are simple things, but making sure that we help them understand that that's why they're struggling, and they didn't have a bad fit, and the fitter wasn't wrong about the fit. It's just we're talking about some minor details. But again, that falls back on the fitter to ask the right questions. Do you play a standard grip? Do you play a mid-size grip? You know, from a black 2G tour wrap to a white 2G tour wrap, they weigh different amounts because of the white dye. I mean, those are the details that we need to make sure that we pay attention to when we go through the process.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've got 2 different color grips on my clubs just so I could match the swing weight to D2.0, because one's a white pigment, one's the black, and yeah. I use a grip that just happens to be a grip. You know, it's a pure grip because I can blow it on.
Yeah.
A lot of times in testing. So you're right. The white weighs 52 grams and the black weighs 48 grams. So it makes a big difference.
It does. It really does. Kim, obviously there's players on the PGA Tour that are passionate about your product. No one more so than Phil Mickelson. You guys have had a great relationship, and obviously a lot of the initial product that was out there was designed for Phil in the early days. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that relationship as well, and how special that is to you and KBS as a company?
Well, yeah. When I was still with Rifle, or Rural Precision, or whatever the heck our name was at that particular time, I met Phil. We both lived in Scottsdale at that time, and you know, it's one, and that's one of the very best things about what me and TK do. A day doesn't go by that we don't have a tour player to work with. But anyway, Phil was playing graphite shafts when he first started out on tour. Yeah, he had a Yonex contract, and then part of the contract was that he was in graphite. Mm-hmm. So I had him working with a fellow that worked with me, a guy named Bill Stokely, and they were getting him into the precision light. I don't know if you remember that. No, the rifle light it was.
Right,
was the
yeah,
rifle,
I remember rifle light. Mm-hmm.
Which was a pretty stiff shaft, because I tried to get the same frequencies with the lighter weight. So I had to blow it up, which made it, of course, stiffer. And he was having some pretty good success. And about that same time, I'd already come up with I'd already started working on Project X. And, you know, when I start working on stuff, I work on it myself, generally, at first, you know, during the early stages of it. And anyway, so one afternoon we went out and I was watching Phil hit some shots and stuff like that. And I was seeing what the flight was, and it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And I talked to him about, you know, hey, I'm developing a new shaft. Would you be interested in working with it? And the first time he hit it, it was it. It took quite a while. He's very methodical in the way he does his equipment. He only changed the wedges to begin with, and then about a week later he put it in the 9, and a couple weeks later in the 8. And it took about two months, but eventually throughout the bag, he was in that shaft. And that shaft, although that was already in design, was, you know, I will tell people that shaft was designed for him. And right. But when I say it was designed for him, it was designed for the category of golfer that he is in.
And what are the unique things you found working close hand with someone that is just has an incredible talent level like Phil? What were some of the feedback points that were unique when you guys worked together?
Well, you know, first off, you have to form basic trust in each other, and that, you know, and obviously his was, you know, I didn't have to. It didn't take long for me to trust what he was saying. And by the way, he is very, very vocal in terms of what he feels and what he thinks. And if you ask him a question, you better get ready to hear an answer, because he's going to give it to you.
And isn't that great? That feedback is so valuable, because then you've got something to build on.
That's exactly right. You know, just what you said about the robot earlier. And he's one of the, I'm not saying few, but he's one that actually feels what's going on. I know that you've experienced this where you've given somebody something entirely opposite than what they tell you it feels like.
That's right.
And I want to get back to fitting again. That's one reason why fitting is so important, because there's so many outliers out there in terms of what you would think would be normal for that person. And then you find out, well, they really fit into something that is entirely different than what you would think. But anyway, so there was another fitting deal. But, throughout my entire career, I mean, in the early days, being able to work with guys like Palmer and Nicholas and Trevino and all those guys. When my dad and I first went on tour in 1979, 1980, there was no other tour vans out there. And what we were doing is, hey, man, I'm sorry about this going all over the place, but this is how I am.
This is brilliant.
Perfect.
This is perfect for the podcast.
So anyway, we went out there, and what we were doing is we were doing purely research. The commissioner was Dean Beeman at the time, and Dean was a personal friend of my dad's. So anyway, we had the same credentials the tour players had, so we had access to everything they had. It was fantastic. I mean, going down eating breakfast with Gary Player. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, amazing. I'm a kid. I'll tell you, the first time that I met Arnold Palmer, I had done a wedge for him, and it was perfect. And I gave it to my dad to go give to him. I said, Arnold's down. I see him over there on the cart path. And Dad says, no, you go give it to him. And this is the first time I ever handed a golf club to an icon. And I was shaken. I mean, I was, and I handed the golf club to him, and he looked at it. And it was, of course, there was a whole bunch of people around. Yeah. And he looked at it, and he's standing on a path, and it had railroad ties. And he just slammed the shit out of it on the heel. I mean, he took it above his head and just slammed the shit out of it. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, I'm petrified. I'm absolutely petrified. I have no idea what's going on. And then he looks at it and he says, that's just right. And I went running back to the trailer. I was still in shock. And my dad says, don't worry about it, Kim. He was just setting the lie on it. And so anyway, I don't know what brought that story on, but
it's an amazing story. Yeah, I mean, different times, isn't it, with equipment? And those old stories of people, and they would take a putter and they go, it doesn't look quite right. Stand on the head, pull the shaft down. Oh, that's right. It's a little flatter, just the way I like it now. Yeah.
And those guys, before lies and before the gauges came out, they knew. There was quite a lot of players that did know about lie and the effect on. And the effect on the ball flight.
Sure.
Even before, there were the gauges and what have you to be able to measure. Guys like Floyd and I think Trevino, they used to get their wedges and they would flatten them to their eye because they didn't want to see the ball going left. They wanted to be able to just fade it in there, And so, long before there were gauges, there were people that really did understand that there were, benefits to having the correct loft and the correct lie.
I think, Kim, what would have been fascinating would have been to have given guys like Floyd, Trevino, I would have loved Hogan to be on a TrackMan basically verbalizing what he thinks just happened, because I bet he would have been pretty darn close to what he was thinking from stepping his trajectories and how he was manipulating face-to-path relationships and those types of things. I mean, those types of guys, I feel like they had a built-in TrackMan into the hands. They were just so talented.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the scores they shot and the equipment that they played with, and you wonder how you could possibly do that. And but anyway, we all did if you were old enough. And it is absolutely it is amazing. And one of the reasons why I think guys are so long today. When I was a kid, if you didn't hit the ball in the middle of the club face, it didn't go anywhere. I mean, and it wasn't in the fairway either. If you didn't hit it on the screws, it didn't go anywhere. These kids today come up, they're swinging out of their shoes right from the get-go because they put it on the face, it's going to go pretty good. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why. Of course, everybody's bigger and stronger, and that's the main reason. But and of course, teaching, but and of course, the equipment. I think the metalwood is allowed people to go distance rather than accuracy, and then try to get distance. We were taught to hit it in the fairway and then try to hit it hard. Yeah. Today, I think the kids are just swinging out of their shoes right from the get-go and then try to get it into the fairway.
Absolutely. You get guys that they can back it up with the stats now. Mark Brodie can back up with the strokes gain stats and how important distance is to the game. And regardless of whether you're in the fairway or the rough, you know, it is a distance era that we live in. You would rather take your chances with a wedge out some rough than back there with a 6-iron, you know, from 185 yards or 190 yards. So distance is a huge factor now, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Kim, if we can just touch on, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your KBS Online Certification, because I think that does the industry a huge service with regards to the verbiage that you're passionate about, everyone having, and people having more knowledge about the way shafts are made and the way club building, club fitting occurs. Love to hear about that.
Well, you want to, again, it kind of goes back to trying to get people to understand things in the same way that we do. And, that probably more than anything else is the message there. It's just simply to try to understand the effects and what have you, and be able to, again, talk to, or at least have a discussion and be able to discuss the same thing. Yeah. There's such a great deal of difference within one manufacturer to the next, or from within the same manufacturer. The game improvement stuff is way different than the stuff that a accomplished player may be playing. And, it's just, it's an educational tool. And that's simply, we feel the more educated people are, the better our chances are that we're going to get our stuff in play. And
we'll take yourself back to that library, back where you're trying to get information, and how difficult that was for you. You had to go into other similar industries, and you had to try to, learn about things that would apply towards what you were doing with steel tubes. And, the resource that you've provided allows people worldwide to just jump online and go through that process.
Well, I can tell you right now, the people in the office that put those things together are going to be really happy to hear about this.
Oh, it's brilliant. We've got our whole team. So every week during lockdown, we have a focus on a manufacturer, and we have a learning module. Everyone in our company this week is making sure by the end of this week they are KBS certified. They go through the full process, and Mike's already done it. We were talking about it. We had a team call yesterday, and I really, thank you a lot for that as a resource.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are going to breeze through that thing, but for a lot of people, there's a lot of information there that they really, are not 100% sure of. I mean, but for guys like yourselves, obviously it probably didn't take very long for you to complete it. But anyway, again, it's about education, and we feel the more educated people are, the better off we're going to be.
For sure. Yeah, with regards to educations, one thing that Ian and I are working hard on right now is educating our staff on, again, the build process. It can only help our staff ultimately sell the build process and why custom club fitting, but the build is so important. So with the help of, your online programs and other online programs, and then take building consideration, you can kind of put it all together, and it makes our job super easy. But I think, like you said, there's things that guys see on there that they go, I didn't even think of that, or I didn't know about it. So then when you walk down the line during a fitting at any of our studios, you can start to hear, the different verbiage the guys are now using after they've done these online courses. So I love the online courses, but the KBS one, it hit the info, it hit the fitting, and it hit building on it as well. And the separate building section had a little dear to my heart, because it's nice to see guys promote the build.
Yeah. Well, it's if it's not built properly, it's not gonna play properly, and that's you can be fit until the cows come home. If it's not built correctly, and you have to take, obviously, there's things that you do to make sure that it is built correctly. And unless you have the knowledge that you guys have had, and you gain that knowledge empirically, unfortunately, it's trial and error, because again, you can read all the books you want, and it's, again, and that's why I always recommend that people go to somebody that fits, it's their primary business. And it's not, a situation where, somebody gets fit and someone else builds it and sends it to them, and those type things. And whoever fit them has to check all the clubs all over again. They ended up having to bend them all and take the grip off some because how it is. But again, I'm with you guys, man. I'm all about fitting. I don't, I'll say it 50 friggin' times during this damn thing.
Well, I can hear so many great sound bites from this, and people are going to be listening to it. And, messaging sometimes when heard once isn't digested. But I promise when someone listens to this, by the end of it, they're going to have a passion to go and book a fitting. And that's what we all want, isn't it? That's ultimately what we all want for this industry, as our golfers to appreciate the value in a fit and the value in custom building.
The thing about it is they need to play better golf and then enjoy this game. And being fit allows them to do that. And, there's so many people that go out and play golf and, they didn't hit balls for, weeks before, and, their first shots are on the course. And, for those people, it's unfortunate that they didn't have some kind of a process prior to getting there. But, the key is keeping the people in the game. We need to keep the people in the game. And the way that we do that is to try to make them play better. And if someone's playing better, you know how golf is, and they're not going to go away. They're finished. They can't wait to get back out there again. And that's what, that's what we strive for. We want our customers to enjoy the game as much as they possibly can. And it's not only fulfilling, it's good for our business. And it's been the driving force for me for many, many years. I want to grow our game. And
that's right.
This for me is the best way to do it. I can't, there's not much else I can do. This is the best way for me to do it.
Yeah, so it's a really great point. TK, I would love to pick your brain. One thing that we get a lot of questions, whether it be on the Q&As or when we're in fittings in the bay ourselves, people always like to know how to transition from an iron set into wedges. And obviously KBS has some unique concepts with regards to wedge design and things like that. And maybe just touch on some wedge specific shafts and what people should look for in there.
Our bread and butter wedge shaft is a high rev 2.0, and it's a complement that we have in different weights. And we can, so for instance, if I'm playing 120, 25 gram shaft, more often than not, I would prefer to use at least that weight and possibly even a little heavier. So what I like to do is make sure that my heaviest shaft in my bag is in my wedges. And my lightest shaft is going to be in the longest club in the bag. So the driver obviously is going to be I play a 60 gram driver shaft. I play a 70 gram 3-wood shaft. I play a 85 gram hybrid shaft and 125 gram iron shaft, 130 gram wedge shaft. So I'm right through the bag, kind of going up. And now specifically when you're looking into wedges, then it becomes, variable to bounces and obviously lofts and what we're trying to create. And, tour players often, some of them want to see the ball flighted a little lower. So we have, options like a 610 wedge shaft or, something that gives them that workability of trying to lower it. But, optimally, we're looking for that blend of spin with feel in the shaft. And our high rev 2.0 has done that. And we've been able to fortunately, integrate that through a set. So if you play 120 grams in your iron shaft, you can play 125 gram in that high rev 2.0. And what we've done in the wedges, we've now come out with new graphite wedge shafts as well that we're going to be able to complement. If you're playing an 80 gram, or let's say you're playing a 70 gram TGI, you could play what we will have is an 80 gram high rev max graphite shaft. So
Hey, Tom, go through your set real quick in frequencies. You just went through them in weights. Go and guys, this is what we have found. This is what we believe in terms of fitting. We believe that this is the correct way to fit. Go ahead, TK.
Okay, and I'll be curious to get both Ian and Mike, both your perspective on this. So for me, my swing speed is around, 110 to 12 normal. I can get it to 114, 15, but that's all I got. So that being said, though, our TD, I play a 60 gram TD Cap 5, our shaft that has been, it's just been amazing. When we came out with a wood product, I'll be honest, I wasn't really anticipating it getting into my bag very quickly, because there's been products out there that I've played from Fujikura and Mitsubishi that have been, I'm like, how are we going to jump into this market and be competitive with those? It just was beyond my comprehension a little bit. Okay. So long story short, we started to, Kim did the design, and when we started to do the prototypes, I would go to Kim. I'm like, Kim, this is ridiculous. The spin rate's literally at 2,300 off my driver, and it's perfect. Launch angles, it's 12 to 13, and so long story short, I landed on this TD6 that was a Cat 5, and it was great. And then it became to me, like, I was excited to have other people hit it. Like, you have to hit this driver shaft. Like, is it just me, or is it really that good? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of weird. And then, I'm looking to where that speed, that 110, 112, where I needed that speed for weight to frequency at. And I felt like the magic number was right around 8.2, 8.3 frequency, which is obviously pretty stiff. But in the driver shaft, that's right where it fell for me. And that's where our Cat 5 straight in 60 gram shaft goes right there. Now in the 3-wood shaft, my frequency is about 6970. Right. So, and that matches it. That performs so that, in a 3-wood, I want it to be able to turn over if I can turn it over. But ideally, I don't want, you need a 3-wood that you just feel like you can hit down a bowling alley. That's kind of my, you know what I mean, what I'm saying. And so, 7.0 is where I landed there. And then my hybrids at 6.8, my irons are at 6.7, 6.8. And then the wedges, are probably just shy of that.
So TK, what driver head do you play?
I've played 2 drivers in the last, I've played both the Sim, and I've played the Maverick, the Sub-Zero and the Sim Max are the 2 that I've had in play.
I'm curious on the driver frequency. What head weight do you normally like?
For personally, I'm D1.5 to D2. Okay. That's, and then I'm D2.5 on the 3-wood, D3 on the 5-wood.
I'm just curious with that frequency on the driver, whether head weight, so shaft weight or shaft flex is a consequence, or the frequency is a consequence of head weight, and that's where there's a little spike there. So, if you're playing, obviously the swing weight a fraction lighter, the swing that, I know Callaway product has been in the last few years been quite light. Sim is in the, 195 without sleeve. That's interesting that there's such a spike in the driver. Then it kind of hits a range 6.9, 6.8 all the way down to like 6.6, 6.5.
Yep, it does change. And also what's, you talk about the head weight too. Our shaft has a lower balance point than than I would say some of the others out there, which increases the swing weight by maybe 1, 2 perhaps. So, and what's really nice, I've been, trying to Maverick. The Maverick has in the Sub-Zero 2 weights in the front back, and you can really change dynamics of, it's because of the 14 gram to 2 gram weights that you have in those, to be able to go all the way from the 6.7 all the way those. You can move the weight and also get the swing weight exactly where you want it. So it's fascinating and a fit. When you must find it when you're testing, TK, when you do flip those weights around, how different you get the feel of the club, and you might feel it load slightly differently, and that affects your timing, and the energy transfer is slightly affected by that, and you see different changes with flight. It's truly amazing now where club manufacturers have gone, whether it's Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, PXG. They've all, the bar has been risen so high
Yeah.
that it's really neat to be able to be in an industry that is really, these guys are smart people, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, looking at your wall behind you, and you know the access that you have to fitting somebody is really incredible, to how you can leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. That's it. And that was kind of, we felt like, you know, when we came up with the name of the company, we wanted people to understand what we were trying to strive for when people walk through the door. And obviously people see the PGA Tour as the pinnacle, and, you know, they obviously know that some products are unique to the PGA Tour, but we want everyone who walks through the door to feel like that tour player for the time that we're with them. And that's from when they book an appointment to when they get a set of clubs and they get them built correctly, and when they go and experience them on the golf course. That kind of timeline is very important, that they feel special. And having components like we do, you know, is a big part of that.
I'll tell you what, in the capacity that you have, many times, what you're doing for your players is actually, and with the build specifications as well, sometimes can be better than what tour guys are getting, which is pretty impressive, because that's kind of the goal. You know, that everybody would thought, well, I want to be fit kind of like a tour guy's fit. I want to have that kind of attention, and really you're doing, to a degree, sometimes what is even more than what is out on tour, because you're talking about weighing grips, even down to the, you know, like you're hand sorting the die grip that is 52 grams versus the one that's 50 and a half.
Yeah. Well, we were chatting with Scott Stallings last week, and Scott was obviously, as a customer, he's a great relationship with Aaron there at Cool Clubs. And, you know, he talks about coming in and he's just like, I just don't trust anyone else. Aaron Valdez is the guy who builds my clubs, and I just trust exactly what he does. He'll, you know, do a little leading edge grind for me. And, you know, we were chatting about how good that relationship is. And we were chatting about that. That's a step beyond what the rest of the guys on tour really get.
100%. And matter of fact, Aaron did Streels when he was with Wilson. He did his first clubs. He kind of did a lead edge grind to camber it, to take some of the dig away. And a lot of the manufacturers, they're influenced by these guys, because you know, they go, well, shoot, if that's what, you know, Streels likes, we're gonna implement that into our product line.
Yeah.
Aaron's an exceptionally good grinder. You know, there's an art there, and you know, at one time making golf clubs was an art. Now it's more of an assembly process, but you know, there is an art there, and he is particularly good at it.
Yeah, I 100% saw that firsthand when I had spent some time out there, and I see that in certain head designs nowadays, that there is a little bit more attention being paid to the sole design again. And whether it's some with a little pre-worn leading edge, whether it's a Strixon with the higher part is in the middle of the head, so if that low point is a little further out in front of the golf ball, it's more about getting that dip club back out of the turf beyond the strike. So I love that there's so many options, and I think sole design, and just to quickly segue on that, is something that we don't often talk enough. People talk about forgiveness. If your club is stuck in the turf, it's not forgiven. Doesn't matter how big the head is. So we need to make sure we're in and out that efficiently as we can.
What is this? The Strixon head that's the 485. If you looked at a lot of those,
785 is the one that's really hot.
That 485 had a great sole design. So that one,
absolutely.
They're doing the OEMs are doing a much better job with turf interaction now, even than they were 5 years ago. They're doing a much better job of understanding and you know, producing products that you know, with the turf interaction in mind.
Yep, agreed.
I think you're right there, Kim, too, about the grinding being, you know, art in a way. Like, we have customers that they'll go, the wedge feels good, but it's just not quite right. And we like, well, tell me your problems, and we'll get rid of that problem as much as we can. So, you know, if the wedge on the bottom says an M grind or a T grind, and that guy's like, there's just something wrong, we can ultimately diagnose and take it to a wheel and completely change that wedge. So that's not one he's gotten off the rack. So, you know, to wedge grinding, that's just taking it to a whole nother level for club building.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, guys, we could probably go on about this stuff for another couple of hours, but we're very mindful of your time, and thank you so much for coming on and doing this with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Hey, Ian, Mike, anytime. We enjoy doing this stuff, but I look forward to this kind of thing, and Tom does too. So hopefully we'll do many more in the future.
Perfect. If you guys are ever up in Toronto, just let us know. We'd love to host you.
Please do.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
All right.
I know. All right. Thanks again, boys. Take care.
You could, like you said, you could chat for hours. And, it's funny. You make these lists of questions and the conversation runs over, and Kim is, that's the first time I've ever really talked to him in person. I think I've shook his hand at a few PGA shows, but really he is, him and his dad are pioneers, like we said in the beginning, but, to speak to the guy who's invented as much as he's invented and come up with, it's always cool. So as a gear junkie like myself, and I think yourself, it's always neat to shoot the wind with these guys.
Yeah. Just to have these conversations. And it's funny when he goes off, it's kind of like he doesn't realize we want him to go off on a tangent. Please go down tell us those stories, talking about Arnie and banging the club to find the right lie. Now it's good. But I mean, that's the gold in these situations. So I thought that was brilliant. He's a unique figure. There's not many people in the industry that have the line named after themselves. They're the visionary. For people, we never really get into it there because TK is a humble guy and he's not really sort of got to toot his own trumpet. TK is one of the top amateurs anywhere in the world. I want to say he holds a handicap at Whisper Rock of it's around +6 or +7. I remember there was a point where Phil Mickelson said he would not play TK for money around Whisper Rock. I remember hearing that story somewhere, and he would give guys like Paul Casey, Martin Keimer, TK would give them shots, playing them around Whisper Rock. He is that good. So, I've watched firsthand them do their testing, and Kim will ask for certain things, and they'll have shafts that have no logos on them. So a lot of the time, TK doesn't quite know what he's working with, and Kim has got his book. And he's making notes, and he's, okay, do this for me at this speed. Flight one up a little bit, shallow out a little bit, see if you can add a little more dynamic loft, work in a little shape. I want to see just how it reacts. And, the relationship is really unique. I can't think of many other circumstances where, they have a one-on-one. I mean, he truly is a human iron Byron.
Yeah, it's, he's the right-handed version of Matty, I guess, so...
I know. I mean, he's we think we're fortunate with Matty, and we can get him to hit all these different shots. And TK is a master when it comes to that stuff. He truly is. And every time I think of doing those type of testings with Matty, TK is the guy who I've got in my mind. That's that's kind of where you think about coming up with that type of stuff. So no wonder their product has translated into being significant high performers in our industry when they go through that process.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one, Mike. I really did. That was one for you and I to geek out on and just enjoy it. And hopefully everyone watching, everyone listening, got as much out of that as we did.
Yeah, it was fun.
Great stuff. Yeah. Okay, guys, that's episode number 8 of season 2 in the books. I believe we have 2 more before we come to the end of season 2. Really enjoying this season. I think we have unique characters coming on all the time. So more to come in the next couple of weeks. Thanks so much for joining us.